Have you ever stood there and watched someone just sit in silence, actually sit, and manage to express more than a whole room full of yelling ever could? This is not a story that starts with fireworks. No grand speech, no showdown, just a woman wearing a dress she reserved for special events, holding a bouquet of roses, waiting for her son to cross the stage. It should have been one of the finest moments of her existence, one crafted by years of giving up, silent prayers, and going without. But what transpired next? Well, let us just put it this way. It reminded everyone sitting in that auditorium, and ultimately the rest of the country, that respect isn't necessarily loud, and dignity does not seek approval. Danielle Merryweather had done it all by the book. She arrived early, ticket in hand, to get ready to cheer on her only child. Jaylen wasn't graduating. He was leaving behind years of service in the military, stepping off the battlefield and into a new life with an engineering degree in hand. But before she could even sit down, two security guards informed her that she didn't belong. They didn't know her name. They didn't notice her strength. They noticed what they wanted to see, and they asked her to leave. Now, if you're like me, you've been around long enough to understand what it's like to be ignored, underestimated, even discarded. It's the type of thing that leaves a bruise, regardless of how kindly it's done. But what Danielle did next wasn't boisterous. It wasn't flamboyant. She just remained. And when she remained, something amazing occurred. Because sitting silently doesn't always equal sitting alone. From the other side of the room, a presence walked in, not loud, not confrontational, but stern. Six men, each with history written in the creases on their face and the bracing of their shoulders. Veterans, brothers, Jaylen's ex-SEAL comrades. They did not come to cause a disturbance. They came to stand. They did not fight. They did not scream. They simply stood by her. And in an instant, this moment, one mom attempting to sit in a seat her son offered her became something much larger. Now I understand our nation has had a lot of brash stories in the past few years, but occasionally it is the quiet ones, the ones with no headlines or hashtags, those that bear the most weight. This wasn't politicized or about authority. It was about a woman who had given up for her child, a child who never forgot it, and a set of men who appeared simply because they understood what that seat represented. The strength in this tale isn't so much in what occurred at the ceremony, but in how it radiated out, how strangers paid attention, how the world witnessed a woman remain still and at last be noticed. So I want to know, have you ever waited with bated breath for someone to notice you? Not just glance, but see you? Have you ever had to be told to move when all you did was claim what was yours? This is more than a tale of one graduation. It's a tale of each parent who sacrificed all without expecting praise, of each veteran who understands that real courage isn't always found on the battlefield, and about the kind of quiet strength that can still rattle a room. Because the truth is, dignity doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. It just takes its seat and stays. And what happened when Danielle did just that? Well, that's the story we're about to tell. She arrived early, proud, excited, and eager to see her button cross that stage. This was to be one of the best days of her life. But before she could even sit down, two guards halted her abruptly and informed her she had to leave. They didn't have any idea who she was, and they definitely didn't know who was standing behind her. Danielle Merryweather hadn't had much growing up. She'd learned to stretch a dollar, keep her chin up when times were tough, and remain optimistic, despite life providing her with every reason not to. But nothing, struggle, the looks she'd received, even the passing of time, could have prepared her for how proud she was that morning. She stood there in the Arizona State University parking lot, clutching a bouquet of white and red roses so firmly her knuckles were white. Her baby, her only child, was graduating. And not any diploma. Jaylen had fought in the war before he fought for a degree. He came back from the military and devoted every ounce of energy to getting an engineering degree. 4 years of long nights, sacrifice, and nobody ever seen part-time work, quietly done. And today was his time to shine. Danielle glanced down at her shoes, the ones she reserved for funerals and weddings. She adjusted her dress, took a deep breath, and stepped out. She'd arrived 2 hours ahead of time. No way was she going to let a minute slip by. The sun was already hot as she made her way across the broad courtyard, dodging clusters of families, balloons, camera flashes, and noise. Her ticket was clutched in her hand, folded neatly. She'd even laminated it, just in case. It was that precious to her. Within the convocation building, the air was colder, but the vibe? Charged. Danielle walked toward the entrance where a volunteer swiped her pass, grinned, and directed her toward the reserved seating near the front. Her throat constricted. That's where she was supposed to be, front and center. So Jaylen could find her, so he'd know she was there, rooting for him. She walked down the aisle to the reserved seating section, distinguished with the sign, Honored Guests. A velvet rope separated the area. Danielle sat down carefully, took her seat, and cradled the bouquet as if it were something dear. She moved her purse strap. Her hands shook. Then they appeared. Two security officers, one tall with slicked back hair, one slightly shorter with a clipboard under his arm. No smiles, no greetings. "Ma'am," said the tall one, "you have to move. This is special guests only." Danielle blinked, not quite certain she'd heard him correctly. "Excuse me?" The shorter guard eyed her badge. "That isn't official. Special guest families only in this area." Danielle sat up a little straighter, her voice steady but clear. "I am his family. Jaylen Merryweather. That's my son." The taller guard let out a sigh, the kind that made it sound like he'd heard 100 stories just like hers. "I'm going to need to see some ID." Without speaking, Danielle dug into her purse and produced her license. Her hands were still quivering. The smile she'd come in with was gone, replaced by something more static. Quiet strength. The guard looked from her license to her laminated badge to her face. "Look," he said, "we're just doing our job. We don't want any trouble, okay? People have been attempting to sneak into this section all morning." Danielle met his gaze. She didn't shout. "I didn't sneak in. My son gave me this ticket personally. It was direct from the university, in an envelope addressed to him." The shorter guard folded his arms. "Still," he said, "we're going to have to ask you to go outside so we can work this out." Danielle looked around. The seats behind her were quickly filling up now. Some people had already begun to notice. Heads turned. Some phones came up, some faking like they were scrolling, others discreetly aiming their cameras. And that's when it hit her, the heat. Not from the Arizona sun this time, but from way down in her chest. It was that burning combination of embarrassment, incredulity, and something else. Defiance. She slowly got up, still clutching the roses. "I don't want to make a scene," she whispered. "I just want to see my son graduate." "We'll sort this out," the taller of them said, "but you have to come with us." Danielle hesitated. Something in the pit of her stomach advised her to remain seated. She glanced back at the seat. Her seat. The one that had Jaylen's name on it. The one he had assured her was hers. He had said that seat was hers. And yet, no one else was jumping up to support her. Just as she thought she would give in, the air changed. It was slight, but she sensed it. The aura around her pulled taut, as if an unseen cord was being stretched. She half turned. Eyes were upon her now, not only the guards. Families from neighboring rows had begun to watch. Some whispered. Some craned for a closer look. A few stood on tiptoe, holding up their phones as if checking messages, though their cameras were already rolling. The shorter guard gestured again. "Ma'am," Danielle shook her head. Once. Not loud, not melodramatic, just firm. "I'm not moving," she said. "Not unless someone from the university tells me to. My name's on that list. My son earned that seat for me." The taller one stepped closer and lowered his voice like he was trying to keep things calm. "Let's not make this a bigger deal than it needs to be." Danielle looked up at him. Her voice stayed low. It already is. But although her voice was not boisterous, it pierced through the din like a bell ringing in a busy hall. Next, out of a couple of seats away from the aisle, a woman leaned forward. She appeared to be around 50, well-dressed in navy blue, a pearl necklace around her neck, holding her graduation program tightly between her fingers. "Excuse me," she said, speaking over the guards. "Is something amiss?" The tall guard stiffened, obviously attempting to placate her. "There's nothing to worry about, ma'am," he replied hastily. "We're simply requesting this guest to move while we check her credentials." The woman gave her an eyebrow. "She's been sitting here quietly. Didn't someone already vet her badge at the front?" The guards didn't answer, just a bit of silence and tight jaws. Danielle was still standing, still holding the bouquet. Her arm had gone sore, but she wouldn't sit down. She wouldn't cry. Not now. "I'm not here to cause a scene," she said softly. "I'm here for my child. I'm here because he made it." The short guard drummed on his clipboard with an exasperated sigh. "There is no Merryweather in the front row." Danielle exhaled, even-tempered but exhausted. "It's spelled Merri. "Ma'am, please." She stopped speaking. She did not speak again. Merely stood there, looking beyond them, staring at nothing in particular. And then she listened. A door opening behind her. Not loud, but something in the noise put the hackles up on her neck. The sort of pause where the room itself holds its breath. From an adjoining hallway, 6 men entered, silent, intent, and utterly unaffected by the rising tension. They didn't say a word, didn't wave goodbye, just moved forward with quiet assurance. Their coats were crisp but still unadorned, black, gray, and navy. Plain, clean, professional. They hit the room like a change in the air. Voices softened. People glanced up. Phones went down. Eyes tracked them. Danielle spun around and froze. One of the men, salt and pepper bearded and serious, cool eyes, withdrew from the group and approached her straight on. The guard shifted slightly, not knowing what was going on. "You all right, Ms. Merryweather?" the man asked softly. His voice was soothing and warm, comfortable, the kind that didn't have to be loud in order to command respect. Danielle blinked, trying to recognize the face. "Hawk?" he smiled. "Jaylen sent us. We came to surprise him. Did not think we'd need to intervene." The taller guard moved swiftly to intercept him. "Sir, this is a private seating area where we're in the middle of something here." Hawk turned his head slightly. Not confrontational, just clear. "What kind of situation? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a mother trying to sit in the seat her son gave her." One of the other men stepped forward beside him, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, calm but alert. His skin was deep brown and his presence just as grounded. "She's with us," he said evenly. "And if she's leaving." "So are we," the man responded matter-of-factly, taking just a small step forward. "Sir, we don't want any trouble," the shorter guard said, his tone not quite as strong as previously. "Neither do we," Hawk replied, "but it appears you already have." In the third row somewhere, someone breathed, "That's them! Those are the men from that Navy SEAL team." Suddenly, the phones appeared again, but not for melodrama. Faces were being recognized. One of the men had appeared on the news following a great rescue mission abroad. Another had testified before Congress. The tension in the room changed once more. Danielle remained silent, still clutching her flowers, still unmoving. She glanced at Hawk, and then at the man standing next to him, and then the others. 6 men, tall, not standing behind her but alongside her. That counted. The 2 guards looked at each other. There was a silent decision made between them. Then one of them moved away. "Enjoy the ceremony, ma'am," the taller one grumbled. Danielle sat down at last. The chair had never felt so firm, so deserved. But just as she allowed herself to catch her breath, one of the SEALs leaned over next to her. His voice was soft, but his statement struck her right in the chest. "Jaylen didn't want you sitting here by yourself." He knelt beside her, one knee close to where she sat. His name was Trevor Banks, and the moment she heard it, the memory snapped. He would come by on training breaks when Jaylen was deployed in Coronado. Always courteous, always polite, always respectful. He said to me, "If something happens, you stand beside my mama like you'd stand beside me." Danielle swallowed hard. Her throat tightened. She nodded but didn't dare speak. If she opened her mouth, she wasn't sure she'd be able to stop the tears. Trevor gave her a gentle pat on the arm and stood back up. None of the men took seats behind her. They stood. Some crossed their arms. Others scanned the crowd like it was second nature. Alert but calm. Not aggressive, not threatening. Just watchful. Trained. Protective. And in that instant, what they were shielding was her. She felt the stares. People were looking. whispering. A few students by the bleachers couldn't help sneaking sidelong glances in her direction. A middle-aged man with a camera made a point of panning across the crowd but never took his lens from her section. 2 seats away from her, she saw a woman mouthing, "What happened?" to a stranger. And the reply? It was uncomplicated. She attempted to sit in the place her son assigned to her. That was all. That was the entire story. But to certain individuals, that was already too much. 3 seats up, a woman wearing a gold pantsuit turned toward her husband and told him, just loudly enough for people nearby to hear. They must have figured she was crashing the party. Her husband whispered something in response, and they both smiled. Danielle ignored the whispering couple. She didn't roll her eyes or even look in their direction. She rearranged the roses in her lap, raised her chin, and looked ahead, unmoving, unflappable. Then, from the side aisle, a young guy in a green graduation robe approached quietly. He was no more than 22, pale complexion, light brown hair, freckles, and a look that indicated he wasn't certain he should intrude, but did. "Ma'am," he whispered. Danielle turned to him. "I just wanted to say, I witnessed what occurred. I'm sorry they spoke to you like that. They shouldn't have." Danielle gave a small smile, warm though tired. "Thank you." "Me too. I'm graduating today," he added, a bit awkwardly. Then after a moment, "But I think your son won the day already." She laughed softly, hardly enough to release the tension in her chest. "Thanks, baby," she said. "That means a great deal more than you could possibly know." He nodded to her shyly, then edged back into his chair, melting into the crowd of green robes. At the opposite side of the room, the guards had shifted to the rear corner. They were standing clustered with a coordinator of the faculty, conspiratorially whispering. A woman in a headset and clipboard was glancing uneasily in the direction of Danielle's row. She seemed flustered, like what she'd just heard wasn't good. But it was too late for that now. Another figure stepped up, this one a woman in her 50s wearing a maroon blazer. She had the look of someone from the graduation committee. "Merryweather?" she asked politely. Danielle steeled herself, not knowing what was next. "I just wanted to let you know," the woman went on. "Your seating was right. We apologize for the misunderstanding. And if you'd like, we've made a special seat for you and your guests, way up front near the stage." Danielle looked over at Hawk. He cocked an eyebrow, questioning silently. "You want to move? Just say so." Danielle shook her head. "The seat's okay." The woman nodded respectfully. "Congratulations on your son. Everybody's talking about him." Danielle gazed straight ahead, her voice low but burning with quiet fire. "They've talked about him. They just didn't see him." The woman opened her mouth to speak, but didn't. She only nodded again. "If you need anything," she started to say, but Danielle had already turned back to the stage, done defending herself. The roses on her lap were heavier now, but not in a heavy way. It was the weight of meaning, of presence, like he was already there. Like all the years, all the sacrifices, all the quiet moments that worked up to this day, finally had somewhere to settle. And the ceremony hadn't even begun yet. Still, however, the mood in the room had shifted. Phones remained out. Whispers continued to hover. But the faces of people, those weren't curious anymore. They looked embarrassed. They looked contemplative. And at least a couple appeared altered. Then the lights came down, and suddenly the music started. Danielle's heart skipped a beat. Time. Her boy was going to cross that stage. The band played the processional, strong, dignified, full of ceremony. Graduates began flowing down the center aisle 2 and 2, caps bobbing, tassels swinging with each step. Across the room, families leaned forward, necks straining, phones pointing up like miniature periscopes. The clusters of cheers rose as fans recognized their loved ones in the mass of maroon and black. Danielle remained seated, both hands clasped around the stems of the roses in her lap. She didn't cheer yet. She scanned every face, every stride, eyes scanning intently, awaiting that one familiar gait. And then, there he was, Jaylen Merryweather. Years of prayers, of running from bills, of sitting alone during sleepless nights, waiting for calls from halfway around the globe, writing letters with no promise that they'd ever be returned. It all came rushing back in one heartbeat. This moment made it real. Then halfway down the aisle, Jaylen looked up. His eyes swept across the room and landed smack on her. His mother sitting where he told her to sit. 6 of his comrades stood behind her, like sentinels, quiet and unshifting. Jaylen's lips opened, not in amazement, but in relief, like he'd been holding his breath since morning and could now exhale. He nodded the tiniest. Danielle smiled, tears welling but still in check. She didn't wave. She didn't have to. Hawk leaned in and whispered, "You raised him right." "I did my best," she whispered back. The ceremony continued. One speech was followed by another, some sincere, some rushed. A representative student, and the dean of engineering, addressing innovation, perseverance, and self-denial. There was laughter. There was polite applause. But Danielle only half listened. The true speech, the one that counted, was still seated in a maroon robe halfway across the room. Even as she clapped, her gaze never strayed far from him. At one time, she looked over her shoulder. The seals still stood. Not a single one had sat. Trevor pulled gently on his jacket, smoothing the fit. The man next to him, older with deep creases around his eyes and stillnesses that comes only from having witnessed too much, gazed straight ahead without flinching. Strong. Ready. Danielle resumed facing the stage. The ranks of the graduates were thinning out now. The ceremony was almost at an end. They were in the M names. Danielle leaned forward just a little, her hands still clutched in the flowers, her eyes fixed on the stage. Then the announcer's voice boomed out across the hall, clear and strong through the speakers, Jaylen Anthony Merryweather. And the room exploded, not because everyone recognized him, but because enough had been paying attention. Enough had witnessed what went down beforehand. They saw the manner in which his mother held firm. They saw what she refused to abandon. Applause erupted. Cheers. Whistles. Someone yelled, "Yes, sir, Gable," as if they were addressing a commanding officer. And amidst it all, Danielle remained. Jaylen ascended the steps and strode across the stage with intent, quiet urgency, shook hands with the university president, received his degree, then stopped. He didn't take off, didn't simply turn and walk away from the light. He turned back toward the crowd, held his degree aloft in one hand, like a banner. Then for one brief, gasping instant, he pointed, directly at her, at his mom, the one who kept it all together when he was away, the one who had faith in him before he had faith in himself. Danielle's chest constricted, her eyes burned, and this time she didn't suppress the tears. They came quickly. She applauded, she laughed, she wept, all simultaneously. Behind her, a couple of the SEALs applauded too, not out of pretension, simply solid, unassuming respect. Jaylen walked off the stage as if nothing had occurred, but something had. And before the ceremony had even concluded, a person 3 seats over leaned over to a neighbor and whispered, "I hope this goes viral." The announcer kept reading names, and the remainder of the ceremony proceeded. But for Danielle, time seemed to crawl. She heard the music, the applause, the changing of seats in her vicinity, but she wasn't actually paying attention. All she could replay was that time on stage, the way her son gazed at her, the way he held up that degree like it was her win too. She touched her cheeks with the back of her hand. The roses in her lap were a bit wilted now, a bit bruised from the manner she'd clutched them all morning. But she didn't mind. She was going to hold on to them forever. Behind her, the SEALs sat down at last, quietly, unhurried, like soldiers off watch who collapse with relief. Trevor leaned forward, touching her gently on the shoulder. "You good now, Mama D?" That was what they'd always called her, Mama D. Even when Jaylen was stationed overseas and they video called from base, that's how they addressed her. The woman who sent them cookies, care packages, notes with lines like, "Keep your heads on straight and nobody better die before you write back." Danielle looked over at Trevor, smiling through lash-covered tears. "I'm good, baby. Y'all can breathe now." Trevor smiled. "We weren't worried." "Liar," Danielle said, smiling through her tears. The men around her laughed, low and warm, the kind that comes from deep trust in old history. Then one of them, Ka Kelakolio, a silent Hawaiian with arms like tree trunks, spoke. His tone was soft but firm. "We weren't going to let them move you. They don't know what it means to earn that seat. The man beside him, Jasper Briggs, nodded. His voice was deeper, more even. That seat's not a chair, he said. That's years. That's deployments. That's you being both mom and dad. That's being there for every letter, every call, every missed holiday. That's the kind of seat you don't play with. Danielle swallowed hard. That old lump crept up in her throat once more. Did you boys drive all the way here just to ensure I took a seat? She asked. Trevor shrugged. We rode for the ceremony, but we remained on our feet because of what they did to you. They did not do anything to me, she said softly. They presumed. That one lingered in the air like morning mist, thick and motionless. Hawk, unflappable as always, leaned forward a little. I've seen war zones, he said, and I've seen better judgment calls under fire than what those two guards made. They didn't see you, Jasper added. They saw what they expected to see. Danielle didn't say anything right away. She didn't need to. Her silence said enough. In the meantime, the ceremony was drawing to a close. The president of the university came to the podium for one final time, making closing remarks. He thanked the faculty, saluted the students, encouraged everyone to go out and create a better future. But not everybody in that auditorium was looking toward the future. There were some still reliving what had occurred. Because tales such as that, they don't remain silent anymore. Somewhere in the throng, someone had already posted a video to social media before the ceremony had even concluded. It was brief, perhaps 30 seconds, but it recorded all that was important. Danielle being interrogated, the SEALs advancing, Jaylen on stage, proudly pointing to his mother. By the time the recessional music began, that clip had already been posted thousands of times. Outside, the courtyard was alive. Graduates poured into the plaza in the sunlight, caps in flight, camera shutters snapping, arms around necks in happy hugs. Then Jaylen emerged. He didn't hurry. He approached her with the confident step of a man who'd fought wars and emerged stronger. Danielle let go of flowers and opened her arms. They encircled each other as if they hadn't seen each other in a lifetime. I saw, Jaylen breathed against her ear. I saw the whole thing. I didn't move, she whispered against his shoulder. I stayed. You didn't have to, he murmured. You earned that seat a long time ago. He stepped back and regarded her, eyes glassy with emotion. They didn't know who you were, he said. But I do. Behind them, the SEALs caught up, laughing now, teasing Jaylen as they slapped him on the back. Man, you've gone soft, one of them bantered. Another shook his head, smiling. Next thing you know, he'll be blubbering at Hallmark commercials. Danielle laughed too, really laughed, for the first time that day. Something inside her finally let go, just a little. The weight she'd been carrying all morning lifted. Then a university staff member hurried over, clearly nervous, clutching a clipboard and wearing an expression that landed somewhere between flustered and regretful. Miss Merryweather? Mr. Merryweather? She asked. We're so sorry about earlier. We're already investigating what happened and speaking with the guards involved. Jaylen turned to his mom gently. You don't have to say a word. But Danielle looked the woman square in the eyes and spoke, calm and direct. Why bother to investigate if you already know what transpired? The woman blinked in surprise, then nodded quietly. Danielle returned to her son, her tone easing. Let's get some photos. And though the cameras snapped and the courtyard hummed with excitement, someone standing close by grumbled under their breath. This is gonna blow tonight, I can tell. By the time the people had thinned out and the sun had just set a little lower in the Arizona sky, Jaylen had clicked more photographs than he ever thought he would. With his teammates, with professors, with classmates whom he didn't even remember but hugged like old friends today. But the ones that counted most, the ones with his mother. She stood in the middle, Jaylen to her left, and 6 Navy SEALs standing tall to their sides, like guardians. No stiff, obligatory smiles, only genuine ones, the kind that reached to the eyes. Come on, Mama, Jaylen said, offering his diploma to her. You should hold it. Danielle released a soft laugh. No, baby, that's yours. I wouldn't have it if it weren't for you. Hold it. She extended her hands, fingers soft, nearly tentative, fingers reaching for something holy. The gold print glimmered against the dying light. She gazed at the diploma, at her son, back again. "I used to pray over you every single night," she whispered, "even when you were overseas, even when I didn't hear from you for weeks at a time." Her gaze never wavered from the paper in front of her. "Each time someone came to the door," she went on, "I caught my breath." Jaylen's jaw clenched. He didn't say a word, just waited. Danielle ran her thumb over the rim of the diploma. "But this," she whispered, "this was something I didn't even know to pray for." She gazed at him. "You graduated." Jaylen nodded once. "We graduated." Danielle drew him into another hug, tight this time. Longer. The kind of hug that caused the people around them to stop without even knowing it. Because that hug spoke volumes. It carried years of sacrifice, quiet strength, love that never was the least bit cracked under stress. Around the corner, the seals had moved back. Hawk leaned against a stone column, arms crossed, observing quietly. Surrounding them, the courtyard continued to hum. Trevor and Jasper chatted with a couple of students who knew them from headlines or stories online. Koa, tall, quiet, was chatted with by a cluster of kids interested not in his history, but in the magnitude of his hands. He showed one of them a hand and their eyes went wide like he was some sort of benevolent superhero. Then a voice came from the student center steps. "Hey, are you the guy whose mom got kicked out of graduation?" Jaylen turned around. A student was standing there, already taking video on his phone. "Is it true you brought 6 Navy SEALs with you?" Jaylen scowled but said nothing. Another student chimed in, energetic. "Man, they said the guards attempted to escort her off. That's crazy. But you just walked off that stage like nothing even occurred." Before Jaylen could answer, Danielle stepped forward, serene and articulate. "Nothing occurred," but she said, "because they didn't allow it." The group fell silent. Jaylen glanced around and noticed more phones directed their way now. Whispers circulated through the crowd once again, skeptical glances. He knew the look. It was like when he was over there. That look of half respect, half curiosity civilians gave military. Not aggressive, just uncertain. "I didn't bring them with me," Jaylen answered finally, his voice firm. "They arrived on their own. That's what real brothers do." A call from the back. "You gonna post about it?" Shake his head. "Don't need to." But someone had already. An hour later, they were at the hotel again. Dinner was in 30 minutes, but nobody was in any hurry to get ready. Off came shoes, ties were loosened, jackets were thrown over chairbacks. The day's tension finally began to dissipate. Danielle sat on the edge of the bed, phone in her hand, scrolling. "Jaylen?" He glanced up from the other side of the room. "It's already at 90,000 views." He cocked an eyebrow. "What is?" She held the phone out to him. It was the video. That video. The one that captured her encounter with the guards. When the SEALs intervened, and then, oh so perfectly, the shot of Jaylen waving his diploma around, directly at her. "Someone added a caption," she said, not wanting to grin too wide. It reads, "She raised a warrior. They stood for a queen." Jaylen rubbed his eyes. "That's a little much." Danielle smiled. "No, it's not." He looked around the room, his teammates reclining on chairs, sprawling on the floor, half undressed and laid back. His mom still sitting there, her face aglow with the screen. And for one moment, he allowed himself to feel it. Not the fame, not the viral moment, just calm. But just as all of it seemed to settle, his phone beeped. A text from someone he never thought would text him. Jaylen looked down at his phone. A new message flashed across the screen. From Chancellor Rearan. He opened it with a tap. "Mr. Merryweather, we viewed the video. We're utterly sorry. We'd like to see you and your mother as soon as you can. Let us know how we can write this." He sat for a moment with that message, allowing it to sink in. Over by the window, Danielle had taken off her shoes and was massaging her feet as if she'd run a marathon. "Ma," he said softly. She glanced over. "Yeah," he held up the phone. "The university wants to see me. Says they want to formally apologize." Danielle lifted one eyebrow. "Took 100,000 onlookers to get a conscience?" He grinned. "It seems so." She didn't answer right away, just went back to scrolling her phone, lips pressed in thought. Then without looking up, she said, "Tell them I'm busy." Jaylen blinked. "Seriously?" She nodded. "I've got dinner in 30 minutes. And a life to live after that." Jaylen laughed, not that it was humorous, but because that was her. The same resilience that had gotten him through every darkest night in Afghanistan. Every frigid bunk in Germany, every endless, isolating hour on a university campus, full of people who didn't resemble him and didn't know his history. That morning, however, Danielle did agree to speak. Not to the university, but to a local reporter who had contacted her. They sat in a subdued coffee shop on Sierra Avenue, again in Bakersfield, California, during a layover on her flight back home. No cameras, no fanfare, just a voice recorder, a notebook, in a tiny corner booth near the window. The reporter hunched over, fingers hitting record. "What made you sit still?" she asked, "even when they asked you to vacate?" Danielle turned her coffee, then looked the woman dead in the eye. "I didn't stay to prove anything," she replied with a shrug. "I stayed because I belonged. My son directed me where to sit. I believed him more than I believed them." The reporter nodded slowly. "And the SEALs?" "They didn't yell," Danielle said, "didn't threaten anyone. They just displayed what real support is. Quiet, solid, unshakable." The article appeared the next day. By then, the story had gained national. Headlines read, "Guards attempt to drag Black mother from graduation. Veterans come to her defense without uttering a word. She wouldn't budge, and they wouldn't either." Another went viral. "When respect appears as protection." People around the country began sharing their own responses. Some on the internet referred to it as a lesson in dignity. Some described it as a reminder of what being a real man is. Composure, respect, protection. Many raised race. Others skirted it. But the reality, it was baked into the tape. It didn't require a lengthy explanation. It just required to be seen. The university issued an official apology. The two guards were quietly transferred while the incident was under review. Jaylen and Danielle were invited to return for a special luncheon celebrating military families. Danielle didn't attend. She told her she'd had enough ceremony for one lifetime. But Jaylen did. Not for attention and not for photos, but to shake one hand. A janitor had pulled him aside, quietly, near the back of the hall. "I saw the whole thing," the man said, "from start to finish. Haven't been able to sleep since." Jaylen gave a half smile. "You remind me of my son," the man added. "I hope that's a good thing." "Oh, it is," the janitor murmured. "I just wish he had more people like you on his side." At home in Charlotte, Danielle fell back into her routine. Sundays at church, grocery store trips on Tuesdays, and occasionally someone would notice her. At the gas station, at the bank. At one point in the post office, a teenage girl saw her and had a weeping fit, just to thank her for not relinquishing her seat. "You didn't yell," the girl exclaimed. "You didn't even put your hand up." And they still realized that they were wrong. Danielle enveloped her in a hug. "Sometimes resistance is rage." Danielle spoke softly. "Sometimes it's walking away, but sometimes it is sitting quiet." That's what people remembered. Not only the SEALs, not only Jaylen, but her, seated, clutch of roses in her lap, like a crown. And somehow, in a world that sometimes prizes drama and noise, that sort of quiet strength shook the entire room harder than any shout ever could. So the next time someone attempts to push you out of a seat you've worked hard to get, remember Danielle, Bass, don't even move. Meet them eyeball to eyeball. And if you're lucky, maybe someone will be standing behind you too. If this story stirred something in you, share it. Speak up when others stay quiet. Stand when someone else is being pushed down. Because the world doesn't change by accident. It changes when ordinary people decide they belong.